Okay, I'm ready.
Hi, welcome to another episode of a show con Natasha Melina. Today with me, I have the incredible filmmakers behind the Netflix special on Walter Mercado, Mucho Mucho Amor. Welcome to Alex and Kareem.
Thank you.
Bienvenidos. ¿Cómo están? How are you guys?
Good.
Más bien.
I'm
Gracias.
so glad to have you here and to be able to chat with you about this incredible film that almost the whole world has seen by now.
Almost.
I wish.
Almost.
We're getting there. It's really getting a lot of great support from such incredible celebrities. How does that feel?
It's insane. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it feels. It's always like a shock. You know, I mean, Tracy Ellis Ross went on like a 3-minute rant about it, and I was like, my jaw was on the floor.
Mine was too. I saw you guys repost it. I'm so happy that you guys are getting all this incredible support and that people are learning, people who haven't known about Walter Mercado are starting to learn about him even after, his passing. I'm glad to see that more people are getting to enjoy what we Latinos have enjoyed for so long, just his essence, his vibras and everything. I just want to know, how did you guys band together to start on this project? Like, how did you guys join forces?
Well, so I met Kareem through a mutual friend, and the first time that we ever met, we talked about Walter. It happened to be a time where Walter was having an estate sale in Miami, and he was selling a bunch of stuff from his apartment in Miami. And I was jealous. I was in New York and I couldn't go, and Kareem was going. And we were talking about that, and I said, Kareem, I knew Kareem was a great filmmaker, and I said, man, you should do somebody should do a documentary about him. And Kareem said, yeah, I mean, I'm going to try to buy a cape, but I'm also going to try to meet someone from the family, see if I can make contact. So I immediately offered myself up to help in any way, he needed. And we set a time to talk about it a couple weeks later. And 30 minutes before that call, my friend Christina Costantini called me and said, hey, I heard through some mutual friends that you're obsessed with Walter Mercado. I want to make a movie about him. And I said, man, this is so weird. I have a call in 30 minutes with another director about the same exact project, but maybe like you guys can do it together. Like I just had a hunch, different styles, you know what I mean? And too much of like a cosmic coincidence. So I introduced them and they hit it off, and the rest is history.
Can you tell me, each of you, what does Walter Mercado mean to you? What did he mean in tu infancia, growing up?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to kind of define. Walter was like a daily presence on television, and we've talked so much about this. I don't think any of us remember a time that he just wasn't there. He always existed. It's like you're born and you have your parents and your grandparents, and they've always been part of your life, and you can't, you don't know what it's like. Well, that's kind of like what Walter. He was just this constant presence, and his his daily TV appearances were like appointment viewing. You had to be in front of the TV, shush by abuela, pena de chancleta, if you talked, and it brought the family together, and it was really, really beautiful. And for me, as like a young queer person, before I even kind of could put a word to it, I saw this guy who was like over the top and fabulous and different, and I'd never seen anyone like him before. I say guy, I wasn't sure if he's a man, I wasn't sure he was a woman, but what I was sure is that he looked the way I felt, and that was super impactful when you see that as a young person who feels different and feels othered, and you see somebody like that who's loved, and if they love Walter, maybe they could love me. And it's a kind of a pathway to acceptance and happiness, or at least to hope, and that was, I think, in a big sense for me, Walter was just always offered so much hope, in a couple of different ways for myself and for Alex and Christina. But yeah, that's what Walter always meant.
That's amazing. And with that being said, can you guys share with us your experience of your first time meeting Walter?
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, it was like, walking up to the house was just surreal. I posted a video recently of us like walking up for the first time, and Christina just looks like like a kid about to meet Santa Claus. And that's really like the closest thing I can compare it to, is like you're just at the North Pole and you're about to walk into Santa's workshop. And we went in and we sat down with the family and with Willie and met Wilma, and then we sort of like waited in this like recessed living room that was like a few feet down from the next room over, and we were waiting for like 45 minutes in true Latino fashion, and then in like glides, like just kind of like appearing, you know, like in air, is this like man with like gold rimmed glasses with like yellow tints and like an all white like kind of linen clothes, which was like his dress down outfit, you know. And he's, you know, it's like Kareem, un monstruo de la cinematografía, and he like had like things to say specifically about all of our careers.
Wow.
Yeah, and like immediately like holds your hands and looks you very deeply in your eyes, you know. He's just like a force of nature from the first moment you meet him, you know. Yeah, and it was surreal. I mean, it just didn't feel like you were hanging out with a real person, which is such an interesting contrast to later in his life, you know, a couple years later when we're, or less, you know, than that, when we're like basically, you know, start to become like an extension of the family in a way. You know, Kareem and I were pallbearers at his funeral, which was like, I never would have expected that walking into that house that day.
And Kareem, since you idolized him and looked up to him for so long, especially as a young boy, what was it like for you meeting him for the first time?
You know, it's surreal. It's funny. I think when Alex says it's like going to Santa's workshop, it's like going to Santa's workshop to meet Santa, and then you find out that Santa is real. It's like it's not a mall Santa somewhere in like, you know, Patterson, New Jersey, right? It's like the actual Santa's workshop, and Santa's actually real. It was amazing. He was so larger than life, and you know, it feels like you walked out of that little box in the living room set, and now you're, and you know, and he's in front of you now. He's a real thing, and he's, you know, you realize how smart he is, and how funny he is, and how utterly charming he is. And in those 2 years that we spent with him, you know, he wasn't, you know, there was never another Walter. The other thing you realize is that the guy you saw on TV for all those years was the real deal. He was that same way when he was on camera or off. I always describe it as a little less octane maybe, and a lot less sequence, but you know, that same kind of person that was full of love and energy and faith, and spoke about astrology and religions and just peppered it through your conversation. You know, I think when we went in, we knew that we were meeting this larger than life figure, but I think we were expecting like the other shoe to drop. We were expecting at some point to say, oh, you know, this is an act and the cameras are off and he's going to be different. And I tell you, from the moment we met him to we were with him 5 weeks before he died, and when he was in pretty rough shape, there was never another Walter. In moments of pain, and always the same one, and that's remarkable. Because, I mean, I joke that to be that larger than life for 88 years has to be exhausting, but it was just his second nature. Yeah, it was a real surreal moment. You know, we never forget. I mean, I think probably that first moment we met him is something that's just engraved into our memories, and that we'll never forget.
That's so incredible. And I just want to backtrack. Did you actually buy one of his capes at the Miami sale?
It turns out it's confirmed that I am a poor filmmaker and could not afford any of the capes when I saw them. I would also argue that they were not his A capes. Like these were probably his like C-level capes. So I loved the idea of buying them. I could not afford them, but in retrospect, I didn't miss out. The real good capes were in Puerto Rico, and we tried them on every day. Yeah. Every day that we were with Walter in his house, we played dress up.
He didn't mind at all?
At first, we did it secretly.
I would have been so scared to touch one of his capes. What if a sequin fell off or something?
I think we were a little scared of getting caught at first, but then he encouraged us to do it.
Oh,
And
I
let
love
me
that.
tell you, you don't. Once you're encouraged, you don't need much more. And it was like we joked that we made the movie in order to play Walter Mercado drag, and it was the most fun. It was the most fun.
And can I ask you, what differentiates an A-level cape from a C-level cape?
You just know. You just know.
The real Walter Mercado fans know. They could tell.
I feel like there's the cape that you could wear to like el supermercado to buy like, arroz, and then there's the cape that you're gonna wear to like eat dinner with the governor. Like that's the kind of difference. Yeah, it's very weird to describe. I wish I had pictures of them to. There's definitely a picture of one of the capes, the one in Miami. I think I have a picture. Either I tried it on secretly that day too, or my friend tried it on. But you look at the difference, and like, yeah, one looks like a doily, and the other one looks like you're ready for Radio City Music Hall.
Oh my gosh, you're killing me. And what were the C-level capes used for? Do you know?
I mean, taking out the trash? I don't know. I have no idea.
That's a good guess. So what was it like getting to work alongside Walter for 2 years and getting to know him on a more personal level? Because not many have the privilege to say that they did that.
I mean, it was so fun, to be honest. Like, probably like one of the highlights of my life, you know? It was just like, like Kareem said, he's so funny, you know, and the people around him are like delightful, you know, like Willie would get so mad at us, and he just like, they didn't understand like what a documentary was. So they were just like, you know, they were like used to the days where it was like, okay, don't waste tape, like action, let's go, you know. And like he would like call action, we'd already been shooting for like 30 minutes, you know. And like Willie would be like, why are you like, he needs to like rest, like you need to stop filming him. And we would be like, let him rest, we'll film while he rests, that's the point of the documentary. And they would fight us, and Willie called us piojitos, which is like lice. And the little, you say bye bye piojitos, and like and like he'd wear his microphone cable on the outside just to like be rebellious, to like look ugly in the shots and stuff, you know, because these guys were also like schooled TV people, so they knew how to like try to ruin a shot, you know. But it was, all of that was fun, man. You know, like I honestly, I miss it. I miss being in that house, and you know, I miss like, you know, trying to trick Walter into saying things he doesn't want to say, and all, you know, and failing at doing so because he's smarter than you, and you know, that was just.
What were some of these things you wanted to get him to say?
I mean, the things everybody wants him to talk about, you know, like who are your past romances, you know, like have you ever been in love? Are you gay or straight? You know, like, and he always had like a sidestep for every question, you know. I mean, he's just 50 years of rehearsed answers. And he'd also, and then when the rehearsed answers wouldn't work, he would just make you laugh. Like he would just basically turn it into a joke. And you know, it'd be that or like unpleasant stuff, you know, like Walter's message to us was always like positivity, you know. And I think he honestly, like Kareem said, like he is the guy you know from the TV, so like that's also true in his real life. He just didn't like talking about any negative stuff. Mm-hmm. So even stuff like when he got sick or the stuff with his manager, like that stuff he would side skirt all the time, so we'd have to kind of like ask the question 8 different ways, you know. I also he threw like a little tea party with his friends, and we filmed it, that didn't like get into the movie. And like at the tea party, I tried to like spring it on his friends, like, so who are some of Walter's like past like romances, you know? And like Walter was like, you know, atacao, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Caught off guard.
And they were all like, I don't know what you mean. Like, I've never met anybody, you know, like almost, it was a constant chess game where like Walter's like, it felt like Walter 35 years ago had a conversation with these people. Like we'll just never talk about any of this, and they were so well trained that even like, all these years later, that just like snapped right in. Their entire demeanor changed, and they were like, no idea what you mean. Never met anybody. Never existed as far as I know. It was just like so wild.
They've got that media training down.
Yeah, 100%.
That's incredible. So you were already mentioning a little bit about Walter Mercado's former manager. What was it like getting him to participate? Was it easy to get him to participate in this project, considering the role that he played in Walter's life?
It was a little hard to track him down, but I wouldn't say it was hard, because I think we went at it through the like full picture, which is that Bill Bakula is the reason that all of us saw Walter on a daily basis on Primer Impacto, right? So for me, I was the one who reached out to him initially when we first talked on the phone. Like, that was a lot of what I talked about. It was like, there really are parts of Walter's life that only Bill can speak to with authority, because he was such a big part of it. It's such a big part of building Walter into the international superstar that he became. So I think like that, plus the fact that like we made it clear to him that we were going to talk about the hard times anyway. So like maybe it would make more sense for him to have his voice included rather than excluded. I think all of that made sense to Bill. And so, he agreed to be in it. At one point he kind of got like, the day of the shoot, he got kind of cold feet and was like, great, I can't wait to meet, just like no cameras, and we were like, no, Bill, it's a documentary, there's going to be cameras, but to his credit, he was like, okay. And then he showed up and he answered every question that we had, so I think as filmmakers, like we respect that part of it, right? That he showed up and he kind of owned his piece.
So moving on, there's other familiar faces within the film. I mean, one of my favorites, Lin Manuel Miranda, Eugenio Derbez. What was it like, and what was the process behind deciding, oh, I want this person featured in the film, I want him to speak on Walter? What was that like?
It wasn't, again, like, it was the hardest part with folks like that is actually just like getting them to hear what you're asking, because like, most of those guys are like represented in some way by like, white dudes, you know what I mean? Like somewhere in like a corporate building. So you're like, trust me, they want to meet this guy. And they're like, yeah, okay. Like there's just like, I've never heard of him, so once we were able to get the asks to them, and it was really more through like personal connects, like in Lin's case, we knew Walter wanted to meet Lin. We'd seen Lin's tweets. So really all we did was, I had a friend who is in Freestyle Love Supreme with Lin Manuel. And so I said, just tell Lin that if he's going to Puerto Rico, if he wants to meet Walter Mercado wants to meet him. Right. And so we told him that, and Lin's father is like a very well-connected Puerto Rican, person in politics. And so he they like made it happen. It was like the only thing he did besides Hamilton in Puerto Rico. I think he did like one other press thing, and then that. And then with Eugenio, I had worked with his business partner, and I, on a whim, I was like, hey, like, I don't know if he would be willing to do this, but he had this character that's very well known and like is somewhat based on Walter. And yeah, like, I mean, that one I was kind of surprised, just because Eugenio's a big star, and you just never know if he actually was a fan of Walter's or not, but he was. It turned out like he had great affection for Walter, so he like showed up and sat with us for like an hour, and it was great. So I think Walter endeared himself to a lot of people, and so like the power of Walter made those interviews happen.
I think that's incredible.
That's true for so many. That's true for so many people. It's interesting because we talk about the two of them, but like there's a former TV host, Mauricio Selick, is in the film, and he's kind of all but retired from being on camera. And he told us as such. He's like, look, I don't do this anymore. Like, once you stop doing this, you never miss it. He goes, but it's about Walter Mercado. And for Walter, and I mean, and that says a lot. And he was just so beloved, so beloved.
And I think those who spoke on him, like the ones we already spoke about, it really pulled the film together. Like the moment that Lin and Walter met, that moment is one of my favorite moments in the film. It's incredible. It's beautiful. And then hearing everything that Eugenio has to say about Walter and the role that he played in his life, I think it's just really nice. And it really ties the whole film together and shows you how much of an impact Walter really had on everyone, even the biggest stars that we know and grew up with. It's amazing. Do you guys have any favorite behind the scenes moments that you want to share with us?
I mean, Walter's obsession with his dog Bruno is just like one of my favorite things.
So
He
cute.
made the film too, Rude.
Yeah, like Walter's was not a dog person ever, and then like they found this street dog, and Walter was like, okay, he can live in the backyard, and then after a while he was like, okay, he can come in the house, and then it was like, okay, he can live in the house, and then by the end he was like sleeping in the bed with Walter, you know. And like we'd be shooting, and just there's so many outtakes of just like Walter getting distracted by like, where's Bruno, Runito, ven aquí, ven a papa, like, oh, you know, and like we'd be like, Walter, we're in the middle of interview. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so cute. So I think like that was one of my favorite things. He would like chew up food and then like feed it to Bruno like a baby bird. It was just like, it was like his child.
Relatable.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Kareem, can you tell us about any favorite behind the scenes moments that you had?
You know, it's funny. There's so many. It's hard to pinpoint them. There was probably about 3 or 4 that we were really disappointed didn't make it into the film, and we tried. You know, you don't want to wedge them in just because you love them. But the good thing is, I will say that there's a couple of behind-the-scenes moments that have now come out on social media. So if you go to Con Todo, which is the Netflix, Twitter, and Instagram account, or Most, which is the LGBT accounts, you can see a few of them, particularly about Walter learning English and his hilarious mispronunciations, a foul-mouthed pet parrot that he had. But I remember one in particular that stands out to me was we were in Old San Juan with Walter. We took him to Old San Juan for a day, and we followed him. He's going to a jewelry store he normally goes to, and then right across the street is this kind of Ayurvedic Indian store that he'd been going to for like 45 years and friends with the owner for like 45 years. And when Walter gets there and he's walking around, he's buying a few things, and he sees, and he's catching up with the owner, and he goes, "Oh, do you have any cannabis?" And we're like, "What?" And the owner goes, No, I have CBD, not THC." And Walter's like, "Oh, CBD," and rolls his eyes, and we're like, and we're all this on camera, like, "Wait, Walter, do you smoke pot?" And he goes, I try, and nothing. It doesn't do anything for me. And we're like, okay. And then he goes, "Not like LSD, which I love." And we're like, "Wait, what?" And he goes, "Well, I used to love. I did some experiments, and I had the most beautiful trips." And we're like, "Wait, what?" We're like, mind is blown, because all throughout Walter tells you he doesn't smoke, he doesn't drink, he doesn't do drugs, and all of a sudden you found out that he's tried smoking pot and he's done LSD, and it's just, it's kind of just so Walter that he just kind of says it off of the whiff, and you're like, "Wait, what?" And we really wanted that to be in the film, and just it did not work out. It did not work out, unfortunately, but it's hilarious. So that's one of my favorite things that's not in there.
Well, I'm glad you shared that with us here. Is there anything that you learned from Walter that you're gonna hold near and dear to your heart for forever?
Yeah, you know, there's so much, honestly. I mean, we became so incredibly close to him, and you know, we went in loving him. And I think, you know, what we learned is that, you know, at the end of the day, Walter's a human being and a complicated figure, as all human beings are. We have our good sides and our bad sides, and we've done Although I can't say that we saw a bad side, but we certainly know that he did things that in hindsight he probably regretted, or weren't necessarily his favorite things, and he went through difficult times like we all do. But I think that one of the things that you realize in spending time with him is, Walter didn't leave space in his life for negativity. As Alex had said in the interview, one of the difficult things of the process of making the film was to get Walter to talk about the hard times, whether that was health problems, his legal troubles, anything. He didn't talk about them because he didn't focus on it. He just left no space in his life for the negativity. He was the most positive person I ever met, overwhelmingly positive, overwhelmingly optimistic. And at the same time, ambitious. He always was going to work on something new. I mean, we were with him, as I said, 5 weeks before he passed away, and he was talking about next year I'm going to go to Mexico. I love Mexico, and I can't wait to finish the book I'm working on. And he was just always ambitious to keep doing things. And I don't think it was because he wasn't happy with all the success he had, because I think he was happy and proud of what he did. I think it was because he loved what he did so much. He really, really loved what he did, and he loved his public and his audience. I mean, that meant so much to me. Like, his joy wasn't necessarily the success or the acclaim. I mean, he enjoyed that for sure. His joy was the work. His joy was doing the things that made people feel better. And that was a big lesson. I think that's just a reminder. I feel like it's something that Walter always taught us, but it really reminded us. It's like, if you do things in order to try to get famous, if you do things just for the money, if you do things for any other reason than to spread love and to love what you do, it's not going to work out, And I think another thing that we walked away with, and I will just say to that, it just reminds you, as a filmmaker, as somebody who works in media, as a journalist, listen, if we didn't love what we did, if we didn't do it for the love, there's a million other jobs anyone else could do. And you should, because fame, success, money, job security, financial security don't necessarily come with a life in the arts or a life in media at all. But if you do it for the love, that's completely different. And the other thing that Walter really taught us that I think was so valuable is that, the most important thing in life is love. And, he always taught us that. He came on our TV sets every day for 50 years and told us that he knew today was difficult, but tomorrow would be a better day. That the most important thing was to love and be loved and allow yourself to be loved. To love strangers like you would love yourself and love your family, and that love could conquer all. And, I feel like we always knew that, particularly because we had Walter's message as a kid. But that reminder that that's how he led his life was, so inspiring and such a amazing life lesson. And I think now that he's gone physically, I think that is one of those things that stays with me. And I think that when we've gone through difficult times and, complexities of the world we're living in today, I get angry about things for sure. But then I stop and I think, I'm like, everybody's going through their own thing. And I just gotta let the love leap in and the compassion seep in, and it makes the world a better place. So, and I feel like I learned that because of Walter.
That's so sweet. He really touched your life, as he did everybody's, I can tell. Is there anything that you think Walter would want his fans, the admirers, the world to know about him that we might not know? Or anything that he might want to have set straight?
I don't think that Walter was somebody he wasn't preoccupied with setting the record straight. He used to always say, I know I have many haters, but I love them nonetheless. And he didn't pay them any mind. Again, this comes back to the idea of he didn't focus on the negative. So he wasn't particularly interested in setting the record straight. I think what he was interested is in promoting that message of love. Like, if you love Walter for what he did for you, or the way he touched your life, or the way he was part of your childhood, or how much your abuela loved him, the best way to honor his memory is to love other people. Like, let love be an infectious thing when you're in the room. I think that that's probably the thing he would, more than anything, would want us to think about when we think of him, and as a way of honoring his memory. I honestly can't think of anything that he would really care about setting the record straight on. He was not that person. I mean, if anything came up, he would always say, okay, let them feel the way they feel. It's okay. I love them too. It's fine. He just didn't have space for that. And, I think it's okay to be in our feelings. I think it's important to be in our feelings. Like, we need to, like, if we feel sad one day, it's okay to be sad. Let sadness come, and let happiness come when it comes. But there is something about not leaving space in your life for negativity. Like, feelings are one thing, negative things are something different. And you don't leave space for the negative. There's a real kind of message there. And I think that that's all kind of his legacy, his life, his memory is all wrapped up in that memory of love and that message of love. And I know that that's what I'm gonna focus on, my memories of Walter being, and what I took away from him. And I hope that people who grew up with him and people who are now discovering him through the documentary, I hope people are walking away with that message that you could be yourself however you want to be, love yourself, let others love you, but more importantly, love others. And I think that's what he wants us to remember and to focus on.
That's so beautiful. I want to end on a more positive note. Let's lift the spirits again. What was your favorite thing of directing this film? Walter has been your idol for so much of your life. What was your favorite part about directing the film?
What was my favorite part about directing the film? I mean, first and foremost, getting to spend 2 years with Walter and his family.
And trying on the capes.
Trying on the capes was a lot of fun. And I tried on the jewelry, and we got to play in Walter's house, which was amazing. It's like, Alex describes it as, it's like if your abuela's house and an ashram mixed together. It was such a mystical, weird place. But honestly, spending the time with Walter and his family was such a joy. I mean, that was my favorite part of making this film. It came with a great responsibility, right? Like, here's this icon of Latino culture, and we are entrusted with telling his story, and we want to make sure that we're doing it just. And we've taken a lot of pride and solace in the fact that his family and his dearest friends and loved ones, and honestly, just overwhelmingly, most people who've seen it have been really touched by the film and really happy with how it honors his legacy. But, I have to say, and we don't get to talk about this enough, I just loved working with the people I worked with. I mean, if you're in the trenches for a project like this, it took us 3 years to make. From the first idea of the film to the day of release was 3 years. It was hard. We knocked on a lot of doors for financing and money to make the movie. We got a lot of doors shut in our face for people who didn't necessarily value Latino stories or Latino filmmakers at that. And I could not wish for any better compatriots in that journey than Alex, Fumero, and Cristina Costantini, who've really become very dear to me, and I love them a lot. It wasn't easy, but when you're surrounded by good, hardworking, smart, hustling people who have a sense of humor, it makes it all more worthwhile. And at the end of the day, what brought us all together was Walter Mercado and our love for him and his love for us. So those are my favorite things about making the movie. And I invite everybody, if you haven't seen it already, please watch it on Netflix. It's available now, and tell your friends and family. And you don't have to be a believer in astrology. You don't have to believe in the horoscopes. You don't have to be a believer in religion. Walter used those things as a way of sharing this message of love and peace. And it was a message that transcended faith or the lack of faith. And I think you might be pleasantly surprised to discover Walter Mercado. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kareem, honestly, for sitting down with us and chatting about this incredible documentary, this film about Walter Mercado, Mucho Mucho Amor. Before you go, do you have any other upcoming projects that you might want to share with us that we should definitely keep an eye out for?
We are hard at work at a couple of different things, individually, and some things in some kind of comparison together. But nothing we can talk about just yet. But just know that this is it's not the last you're going to see or hear from us.
I'm so glad, because your filmmaking skills are like, they're unmatchable, they're unbeatable. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye out for all of your projects. Kareem, thank you so much. It's been an incredible pleasure. On Netflix, Mucho Mucho Amor.